Goku, the Saiyan warrior, brought down to Earth, gaining massive and almost absurd amounts of power, fighting multiple powerhouses such as Kid Buu, Perfect Form Cell, and currently Granola and Gas, and Black Frieza in the manga, and Kratos, the Spartan warrior, betrayed by the gods themselves and led on a path of vengeance and rage, eventually killing said gods and now in a calm man forever, suppressing the Spartan rage he once had against the gods. But who would truly win between Goku or Kratos? Before we start off, I would like to say thank you to Rogue for helping me with this video and collaborating with me on it, so go subscribe to him, and while you're at it, subscribe to myself as well, as I am on a road to 10,000 subscribers, and remember, you can always unsubscribe if you feel the need to, and lastly, but most importantly, enjoy. Within Battle of Gods, Goku would fight against the god of destruction known as Beerus. Goku would then achieve the Super Saiyan God transformation and clash with said Beerus. Beerus and Goku would then have enough power to destroy the entirety of the universe severed macrocosm. This not only stated by the Kais, but even Goku and Beerus themselves. The reason this is an impressive feat is because the Dragon Ball macrocosm is composed of multiple infinitely sized space-time continuas and realms, such as the World of Living, Hell, the Kaioshin realm, Snake Way, and etc. etc. This is further extrapolated upon within the Dragon Ball Z and Super guidebooks that the universe is infinitely expanding. This would also make sense seeing how all other realms and things as the World of the Void within Dragon Ball Super and Hell being a parallel world or equal or even greater than the size of the World of Living. If this wasn't the case, then none of these feats prior could truly be the case, and this would mean that at bare minimum, the macrocosm has two infinitely sized universes or space-time continuums within it, that being Hell, as I said prior, that is equal or greater in size to the World of Living, and the Kaioshin realm and the World of the Living. For those still trying to deny this within the other guides as well, it's directly stated that there are infinitely existing galaxies scattering and or scattered throughout the universe, or that there are innumerable stars in other celestial bodies. Innumerable by Oxford definitions being something that is too many or too much to be counted, often used in a hyperbolic way or context. However, with the other pieces of evidence, it's not really up to interpretation, and it is concrete that Dragon Ball, along with its 4 to potentially 5 other realms within it, are infinitely sized realms. This would mean that at a low ball, Goku was infinitely 4D low multiversal within Battle of Gods alone. However, if you think that Beerus were going to destroy the entirety and everything within the Kaioshin realm, as well as there's the direct statement within the guides that it's directly stated that the Kaioshin realm and heaven encompasses a higher level of reality, possibly reaching those infinitely 5th dimensional tiers of power, since as proven earlier, all the realms within Dragon Ball are infinite. This is further explored upon within a translation from ChatGPT, saying that angels higher than heavens reside in heavenly kingdom beyond our understanding. The gods who watch over the world are perched on this land in a realm beyond dimensions that we people of the human world cannot fathom. However, I'll leave this up to your interpretation on if you truly believe that Goku is infinitely 4D low multiversal or infinitely 5D complex multiversal. People may claim that this is an only half feat, seeing how at face value Beerus and Goku's combined power was what's going to destroy the macrocosm. However, Goku was able to absorb the Super Saiyan God transformation to his base form, at least within the anime's continuity, and continue to pressure and combat against Beerus and give him a run for his money within not only Resurrection F, but also within the Battle of God saga within the Dragon Ball Super manga and anime. This feat is also consistent, seeing how Beerus was also able to nullify the said energy and dual output they both produced in order to perform the said feat, meaning his durability, AP, and DC would all scale to each other individually and together. This would make sense, seeing how Goku during the Tournament of Power would then battle against a character known as Jiren. For those who are relatively new to the Dragon Ball series and cosmology/cosmogony, Jiren within the anime guidebooks alongside Goku is consistently portrayed to be above that of the gods of destruction themselves, at least individually, and to be the most powerful warrior they've ever seen. This would mean that Jiren inherently scales above not only Beerus, but any prior version of Goku, up until his mastered Ultra Instinct form that was actually weakened due to the numerous beatings and battles he had did prior against Jiren, Toppo, Kefla, and many more. Goku and Jiren would then clash many times and not destroy the world of Void. This could also be interpreted as ki control, or that the Void of Nothingness is either bigger and or encompasses more space than that of the macrocosm. As for speed, the Universe 6 tournament hit's ability of Time Skip is also Time Stop, and Goku is able to not only move within it, but bypass it. This will grant Goku inaccessible speed, however, only if you disregard the feats of being stronger than your opponent, and then being able to bypass your opponent's said hacks because of being stronger than said opponent within Dragon Ball. As within Dragon Ball, if you are stronger than your said opponent, you do have an advantage against them, against things like hacks and other abilities. During the Granola arc, Granola was able to move faster than instantaneous teleportation. This feat is further supported as Goku even mistaked Granola's raw speed for that of instant transmission, as Granola even said that this is not only a lower or weaker form than his overall power, but that this is only a sliver of power that he doesn't need to waste on petty things such as instant transmission. This would mean that Granola does have infinite speed consistently, and Goku would then surpass that of Granola with things such as True and Mastered Ultra Instinct, so obviously Goku should scale above this. This is further supported as it's directly implied that Gas is more powerful than that of Granola, as it's further implied that not only could Gas beat Granola, but that Granola might even think that he's inferior to Gas himself. However, within their little scuffle, Gas had the upper hand the entirety of the time, and as for hacks, Goku has the ability and technique known as Ultra Instinct. Ultra Instinct is a form of not only precognition, but autonomous self-movement. Within the Moral arc, Goku verbatim states that Goku's body perceives the action and learns to counter it instantaneously and appropriately, meaning the only way Kratos would be able to bypass that ability is by being completely stronger and faster than that of Goku. Within the anime continuity, as well as the manga, beyond popular belief, Goku is also able to use the Hakai. The Hakai is a form of existence erasure beyond that of the soul. Also, before anyone tries to get at me within the comment section, ki does equate and equal to speed, as shown in the Dragon Ball Z saga. This is shown with the Namek saga, where Vegeta verbatim states that if one power grows, so does their speed, and with the Super Saiyan multipliers that anecdotally show the user's speed and power increase by a significant, exponential, quantifiable margin. Furthermore, time hacks such as Time Skip won't work on characters such as Goku, as even Hit remarks that this wouldn't work on Goku. However, with this being said, who would truly win between Goku and Kratos?
Goku, the literal face of anime, and Kratos, one of, if not the main face of PlayStation. The influence of both of these characters in both the Dragon Ball and God of War franchises have had in the versus battle medium is so unreal. I honestly can't even accurately describe it in words. If you clicked on this video, you're probably already familiar with the scaling for both of these characters, with both having infinite 4D to infinite 5D arguments, which I feel is their more consistent and grounded scaling, with some even going as far to use the edgy outer versal arguments provided for both of these characters in this community, which me and the boy Tempest will not be using in this video respectfully. Koyama has verbatim stated that his outlook on the Dragon Ball cosmology isn't valid to scale, and the amount of fake scans used in the God of War fandom is actually unreal. Plus, PlayStation All-Stars canonicity is genuinely questionable, as it's more of an Easter egg or a reference to PlayStation All-Stars, as Kratos' story within it starts as wanting to prove to himself if he can lead the Titans, even though Gaia, the literal mother of them and narrator of God of War, knows exactly what he's capable of. It just doesn't add up to me, nor fit the timeline consistently. But now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get straight into business. To begin, and funnily enough, Thor's feats from God of War actually have slight contrast and similarities to the feats Goku performs in Dragon Ball Super, with one of these main similarities being a clash against a formidable opponent, that being Jormungandr, that threatened the entire cosmology of the verse, but instead of reducing a macrocosm into nothing in his fight against Beerus, Thor and Jormungandr just splinter the Yggdrasil due to their clash, with the tree's existence alone supporting all of creation alongside its boughs, in which every strand of the Yggdrasil transcends time and space, with branches that stretch out to infinity, implying an infinite amount of cell strands within the tree. We also know that the Well of Fate in Midgard contains endless amount of timelines, which the Yggdrasil verbatim transcends, making this a multiversal to multiversal plus feat depending on who you ask. And in their second fight, the energy both Thor and a younger Jormungandr were exerting could be felt in all of the realms, which are separate dimensions with their own space and time, and the 9 realms rest and exist on certain portions of the branches, specifically around the end. In its most lowest interpretation, this would be uni plus to low multiversal, depending on who you ask. This would be infinite 5th dimensional low complex multiversal if you think space-time continuums are an actual 4D construct with 4 dimensions of measurement, which is still debated about to this day in the versus debating community and even among physicists as well. And I'm not really trying to get too deep into that, so I'll just leave that up to your interpretation. Kratos would be relative to Thor, because not only did Mimir tell Atreus in lore and legends that he wouldn't know who would win if they were to fight to the death, while stating that Thor and the serpent splintered the tree before this, but we just straight up see Kratos duke it out with Thor twice, and in their second clash, which Thor verbatim tries to kill Kratos, they do show relativity, with Kratos being superior pretty blatantly in the end. Kratos in the Codex described Thor's attacks as heavy as any he has felt before. However, this is extremely taken out of context, just like the Baldur statement, and people try to say Thor is stronger than Zeus base to base in God of War 3 or fear Zeus, which simply isn't true. Not only is this statement referring to how heavy Mjolnir is via Kratos not being able to lift it or maneuver it, but Kratos is just straight up confirmed to be weaker than his God of War 3 iteration, and the evidence supporting this is beyond astronomical. In the official PlayStation guide to God of War 2018, which was promotional material back then, it stated that Kratos needs to reawaken his dormant powers. We know this isn't referencing the power of hope, because it's confirmed Kratos kept a portion of hope to himself, meaning it's referencing his base strength that's been rusted over the course of 115 to 150 years at the very least. It's confirmed Kratos is rusty at the start of 2018 by Corey and Eric, but it's also just shown in his fight against Baldur. It's also stated within the novelization for the 4th game that Kratos' muscle mass has just straight up depleted from God of War 3 to God of War 4. He's lost all of his amps and equipment that even allowed him to declare war against Olympus, which is explicitly stated in God of War Ragnarok. He doesn't have Prometheus' ashes anymore. He doesn't have Hades' soul, Nemean cestus, Kronos' rage, the golden fleece, the blades of exile, or the blade of Olympus that provided him with the strength he had while he was the actual god of war. Zeus, on the other hand, scales above both of his brothers, Poseidon and Hades. This is stated like so many times in game, in novels, in manuals, strategy guides, and so forth. Zeus with the Blade of Olympus thinks he can utterly one-shot Hades with 0 difficulty. On top of this, both Poseidon and Hades fear Zeus's thunderbolt and down to him every time they even anger him. This same Zeus who was able to damage and force Kronos to regurgitate his brothers, which overall led to the Great War. Keep in mind, Kronos defeated the embodiment of the skies or universe, that being Uranus, a being with infinite energy in a full-on cosmic battle. In the Great War, Hades in fact shows relativity to Kronos in a tug of war for his soul, with Atlas being superior to both a younger Poseidon and Hades. Pretty blatantly, they had to tag team him, which implies a superiority in general. A weakened Atlas is capable of holding up all of creation, multiple dimensions with their own space and time, with most of them stated to be infinite in size from reverting back into chaos, annihilating the existence of all of these realms. Hercules, just as in the mythology, is also capable of doing this as well. Kratos has also defied universal laws by pushing back not only a weakened Atlas's fingers, but a weakened Kronos' fingers as well. I don't really want to get into the debate on who's stronger between Kronos and Atlas. If you think one is stronger than the other, I don't really care. But his ability to fight and contend with beings with size capable to humans and ants, which is about a 750 times difference, not even mentioning the sheer difference of mass. But this is just evidence that Kratos can physically brawl with beings who are relative to Atlas, who Zeus scales above, ending the Great War by sending them to Tartarus, dethroning Kronos, and now ruling the Greek pantheon. Of course, this isn't Zeus at his strongest, but it's not really something that's spoon-fed to many players, and I don't think Odin creating 7 finite universes out of a finite being, or even a post-Ymir Odin being superior than a weaker Kratos 1-to-1 is even remotely comparable to defeating beings who have infinite or endless amounts of energy like Tartarus, Uranus, Ceto, and Nyx, with the gods, at least the big 3, scaling above these primordials and becoming the new ruler of these domains. And people actually underestimate how much stronger Zeus actually is than this. This war happened eons ago when most of the Olympians were younger and not at their best, with the Olympians growing in might over time, just like in the mythology. Might meaning one's power or strength, with Zeus being the strongest out of everyone, which is stated and shown multiple times, while also being consumed by fear. And while the difference in power is still unquantifiable from the Great War to the events of God of War 3, the difference in strength has grew to such a considerable degree. The main echelon of the Olympians are straight up one-shotting Titans in God of War 3. All of this would upscale the Greek pantheon, since Kratos is confirmed to be weaker in his adventures in the Norse realm. When it comes to speed scaling, Kratos can move and traverse in the realm between realms, or the void as described by Mimir, that's stated to transcend time, meaning anything that's happening in this void cannot be measured by time. Any battle or any movement is exceeding time's limitations altogether, meaning anything that lives in the void, like Needhogg or, I don't know, Ratatoskr, transcends the time of the 9 realms as well as the endless amount of timelines within the Well of Fate. This is far more impressive than moving in a space or void that's considered to be timeless. Think of Elden Ring's Chasm of Time with Placidus Axe. He's literally in the space between the main timeline and another we haven't seen or interacted with. Everything happening within that chasm is happening in no time, yet in God of War, we know the realm between realms is stated to surpass time. Think of the speed formula real quick, as speed equals distance divided by time. The formula I laid out would simply just break apart as time is surpassed or undefined in this realm, as time would be practically impossible to calculate mathematically in this void, yet distance is still traveled. Therefore, the speed itself cannot be measured. I know some will disagree with Kratos' immeasurable speed scaling, regardless of how blatant it is, but infinite and even inaccessible speed scaling chains is also pretty blatant in God of War scaling as well. Any Vanir god worth their salt can straight up stop time with their temporal magic, and anyone competent enough in the Norse realm, like Odin, Skoll, and Hati, could easily move within it. This would be consistent as well, since not only is it stated that time is meaningless for a Titan, granting them inaccessible speed at the least, with showcases of acausality hacks as well, but the primordials also raged for an eternity before time even existed, showing gods or other godly races in God of War are capable of moving in no time and aren't resisting time hacks. Persephone in Chains of Olympus can react to a single directional beam of the Light of Dawn. The Light of Dawn is explicitly stated to hail from the same energy source of that of the Light of Helios, with Helios being capable of lighting up the entire underworld in an instant in an omnidirectional fashion. And the underworld is not only stated to be a chasm of immeasurable magnitude, but it's also stated to have an infinite distance in the level design section of the God of War 1 strategy guide. Kratos in Chains of Olympus scales to this, but with the many physical amps Kratos has in God of War 3, he's just blatantly above this, especially with him gaining access to Hermes' boots that literally just amplifies his already broken speed. I mentioned all of this because I will be using God of War 3 Kratos and Norse Kratos separately in this video, seeing how these versions of Kratos will stack up to Goku rather than going balls deep on a composite Kratos. I personally feel like that's fair and more interesting and overall what y'all want to see. So yeah. So there's the stats laid out and presented and whatnot. Me and Tempest have both hopefully convinced you all that they're sort of in like the infinite 4D to infinite 5th dimensional range, depending on how you want to interpret the feats. However, something really important to premise to this discussion when going over a matchup like this, or Dragon Ball versus any verse in general. Can said combatant have his hacks overpowered by Goku or anyone in the Dragon Ball verse? And the answer is no. The hacks in God of War don't really operate on a level where the power level of a combatant is involved. It's just your opponent getting purely out-haxed. with literally the only example in God of War where Hex works on opponents weaker or below you is Hades' soul stealing, where it's shown to be like a physical tug of war. But think of the Norns or the Sisters of Fate real quick. Some of the most hacked out beings the God of War verse has presented to us. Beings who can oversee entire archetypes and scripts and can manipulate the threads of fate that span all life and time, including both Odin's script and Zeus's thread, which would indicate that Hex bypasses physical strength for the most part in the God of War verse unless they have a resistance to said Hex. So Goku being strong enough to negate Hex against combatants who have a lower power level than him in his verse doesn't mean it's applicable in cross-verse. Plus, that's sort of like a no limits fallacy to say that Goku can just overpower all of Kratos' Hex because he can do it in his verse. Me and Tempest will be granting this point to Kratos, that you can't just neg all and any hacks because of a power level argument. When both combatants seem to have relative power, both combatants will need clear-cut resistances to said hacks presented, which I'll get into shortly. So going ahead and getting the cringe arguments surrounding this matchup out of the way first, when comparing hacks and resistances, I don't think Kratos removing Goku from the battlefield via sending him to Tartarus is a win con, especially if their fight pans out like your average Dragon Ball fight, considering that both combatants are no slouches and are both experienced when it comes to martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. But Goku can sense energy. He'll be able to sense Kratos' energy and just instant transmission back to the battlefield. And Goku doesn't really instant transmission his opponents away from the battlefield. It's more so using instant transmission to get the leg up in a fight. And when doing versus battles like this, why have the argument where one character can just BFR the other? It's kind of lame and not what y'all came here to see. I also need to get the transformation argument out of the way as well. People will say Goku would just increase his power to a point where Kratos can't keep up, which isn't true. The difference between Dragon Ball and God of War on how they handle power increases is that, unlike God of War, Dragon Ball just has an established finite number surrounding most of these power increases, with Super Saiyan God being unquantifiable, with Super Saiyan Blue being a 50 times increase on top of that, and MUI and True Ultra Instinct being unquantifiable. Kratos, with his godly rage, can just straight up increase his power. This is blatantly shown in numerous instances, such as when Deimos is killed right in front of him, or when he rages out against Baldur, who had the upper hand in that fight actually, against a rusty Kratos, then proceeds to switch the flow of the fight immediately. This is also shown in the Fallen God comic, where his rage gives him a power increase, going from getting one-shotted by the Chaos Beast to utterly overpowering it, displaying far greater strength and speed. This is how his rage has been consistently portrayed. Even devs from God of War Ascension have spoken about this, referring to his rage as sort of like a power increase in pretty much all raw stats. So it's just silly to bring up that argument or think a God of War 3 Kratos or even Norse Kratos won't tap into this power if the situation calls for it. Getting into one of the most relevant abilities in this fight, in my opinion, would have to be stamina, in which Goku would be at a heavy disadvantage, even being extremely charitable with Goku being in MUI for half of the tournament of power, which he wasn't. That'll only be 24 minutes of him maintaining that form, when compared to Kratos' stamina feats, such as climbing Pandora's temple for 3 days straight, and fighting for 6 days straight on the back of the Pegasus. In the Fallen God comic, he's also traversed the planet and fought for months without any form of fatigue. In God of War 3 specifically, Kratos manages his attrition to a point where he can contend with beings who have fought for eons to raging for an eternity before time even existed. Now, not to say Kratos himself can fight for this long, as that's certainly debatable, but he has fought beings that can fight for this long and just straight up overpowered them, meaning these gods and titans couldn't really ignore his combat prowess alongside his overwhelming aggression. So I don't think it's a stretch to say Kratos can simply out-stamina Goku before MUI runs out, when he has the empirical evidence to suggest that, and far better self-sustenance as well. We see Goku can't maintain this form pretty blatantly in the anime and in the manga, and it's verbatim stated by Goku himself that he can't stay in this form that long. Even then, MUI is a form entirely dependent on said character's speed, since it's just movement without thinking and not necessarily instantaneous movement or reactions, attaining this type of flow state, and Jiren obviously being capable of tagging him. This argument only comes into play if you think Kratos doesn't have immeasurable speed, with his infinite and inaccessible speed scaling chains being pretty concrete. If Kratos has Hermes boots in this instance, he can simply tap into speed that goes higher into inaccessible speed, due to it granting him amplified agility, even though I don't think he needs them to begin with. Getting into the equipment Kratos will have throughout the fight, Goku doesn't really have equipment, as he's pretty much the martial arts guy. One of the weapons God of War 3 Kratos will have throughout the fight will be the Blade of Olympus, which grants him abilities like BFR, as I mentioned earlier and explained why that isn't a win con, but it also has 2 other abilities Kratos will have access to throughout the fight, such as dishing out energy blasts that possibly have existence erasure, as they just delete everything in its path. You can also chalk this up to deconstruction depending on how you want to interpret it, or being capable of draining or absorbing his opponent's godly energy, which Goku has a significant amount of. The Blades of Exile, if we're using God of War 3 Kratos up against Goku, is really not something Goku would have a good time with. The Blades of Chaos in God of War Ascension, Chains of Olympus in God of War 1 are capable of draining and absorbing the life force of his opponents, with the most impressive showcase of this is the blades damaging and draining the life force from Ares, who scales in relativity to the Big Three, which is supported in the God of War Ascension multiplayer, appearing as one of the mightiest gods of Olympus. Ki is just straight up life force, or the latent energy within someone in Dragon Ball. On top of all of this, the Blades of Chaos not only augment his rage, but they regenerate any stamina or any damage lost as well. The Blades of Athena, which is what was gifted to Kratos after the end of God of War 1, and what was used in Ghost of Sparta, God of War 2, and at the beginning of God of War 3, are stated to be superior than the Blades of Chaos, and were made to be a replacement for them. They don't really have different properties of creation fundamentally, so everything the Blades of Chaos did, the Blades of Athena can do to a superior degree. This is best shown with them being capable of damaging and draining the life force and magic from Poseidon's sea avatar and the hippocamps, with the Blades of Exile just being an amped version of the Blades of Athena, and are stated to be his most powerful ally against Olympus. And their most impressive feat was being able to damage Fear Zeus, who is the abstract conceptual embodiment of fear, and scales in relativity to the concept of hope, which scales above everything in the Greek pantheon. So these weapons upon impact will most likely do heavy to even fatal damage upon Goku, with them doing nothing but amping Kratos and regenerating him as a result. If the fight does pan out like a physical brawl, utilizing hand-to-hand combat and martial arts, Kratos would eventually start to use these weapons in his arsenal. He sort of uses a methodical blend between weaponry and hand-to-hand combat in almost all of his fights, and Goku is just a martial artist. Kratos would gradually wear down Goku's life force with either the Blades of Exile or the Blades of Olympus, which we know Goku's life force, or Ki, is his power. And due to this, Goku would resort to the Hakai technique. Now finally, onto one of the more interesting arguments regarding this matchup is how would Kratos stack up against Goku's pseudo Hakai if he were to use it? There's like a huge split on if the Hakai Goku performed is actually existence erasure, with some arguing it's more of a form of matter manipulation or deconstruction. I don't want to make it seem like I'm downplaying Goku or wanking Kratos, so I'll provide arguments for both interpretations. Please everyone, listen to what I have to say about this. Starting with it actually being existence erasure, I need to stress that this isn't something Goku just whips out casually like a Beerus, who actually has a form of decent mastery over the Hakai technique. It was portrayed as a last resort that used all of his power, or what was left of it, in Super Saiyan Blue, and rendered him powerless after he tried to copy the Hakai on Zamasu, performing an extremely pathetic and weaker version of the actual technique. So I don't know why people act like Goku does this in character. So if Goku attempts to do this against Kratos, it has to work. So let's say he does use his pseudo Hakai against Kratos. You would have to prove that it can bypass or negate Kratos' immortality that's reliant upon the concept of hope. And that's a real argument, by the way. This would apply to Norse Kratos as well, since it's confirmed he kept a portion of hope to himself at the end of 3. As long as the concept of hope exists, Kratos simply can't die. That is his quote-unquote deathless curse as stated in the Fallen God comic, and is how his overall immortality functions. To say Goku's pseudo Hakai and the Hakai technique in general can negate and bypass every form of immortality when nothing in the source material or even in the anime continuity suggests that is most definitely a baseless assertion with no evidence supporting it. All the Hakai has shown is that it bypasses basic forms of immortality shown throughout many pieces of fiction, like indefinite life or indefinite regeneration. So we can't assume that it does bypass Kratos' immortality, because it hasn't been shown to bypass that form of immortality, which is sort of supported by Beerus himself, saying that he can't really kill immortals, which is in context to beings like Zeno, who can actually erase things. I feel like this is something easily forgotten, not just within the versus debating community, but for the people who are new to these things as well. There's multiple types of immortality, not just basic things like indefinite life and so on. It's important to note that what gives Kratos another leg up in this argument is that Fear Zeus conceptually erased Kratos, and Kratos was resurrected and regenerated via the power of hope, and became immune to Fear Zeus in bypassing this same broken level of immortality that Kratos has himself at this point. Goku, at least in the main continuity of Dragon Ball, has no conceptual resistance to even contend with the power of hope. As for the Hakai technique being a form of matter manipulation or deconstruction, Kratos has resisted things like this as well, and this is applicable to both versions, as Kratos tanked the Light of Alfheim in his base strength with no physical amps while attempting to reawaken his dormant powers throughout the events of God of War 4. The Light of Alfheim can dissolve souls to the point it can destroy them, and is the primordial light that separates the realms from each other. Even someone like Odin, who's disguised as Tyr at this point, is shocked at this as well. So yeah, Goku's pseudo Hakai is not a win con, unfortunately. If existence erasure or deconstruction, depending on how you want to interpret it, is a thing, Kratos wins on that with the Blade of Olympus, while not rendering himself powerless, but actually providing himself with more power. But what about True Ultra Instinct? I think we can all agree that True Ultra Instinct is a form portrayed as being superior to MUI, with it literally being Ultra Instinct, with Goku being able to think, use conscious thought, and keep his emotions as a Saiyan. I will be using Norse Kratos for this specific section, and funnily enough, Kratos in God of War Ragnarok has actually fought someone that has not quite the same but similar hacks, with that being Heimdall, whose precognition is made up of foresight and telepathic abilities via foresight and reading intention. Due to this, he required the Draupnir Spear, which is going to be relevant in this fight, to overwhelm Heimdall's senses and overcome his foresight in general. The Draupnir Spear is a weapon that is stated to duplicate without any limit, is a weapon capable of embedding itself onto his opponents, and also capable of detonating via exploding, alongside many other abilities and runic attacks as well. The most impressive showcase of this is the spear being capable of damaging a rage-amped lightning cloak Thor, with the spears being capable of embedding themselves on this lightning cloak and detonating on him. Now, whether you think Kratos was getting faster or just overwhelming Heimdall's precognition doesn't really matter to me. It's just blatantly shown that at the beginning of the fight, he goes from not hitting him to making Heimdall block, to making him bleed, to straight up beating the shit out of him. Plus, in the last phase, Kratos was able to use all of his weapons against him rather than just the spear. It wouldn't make sense for Heimdall to stop using his precog as well, as that's literally his main ability. He's just raged amped while using it, totally ignoring Kratos' realm shift talismans and amulets. I don't really care if you think that those time-related abilities wouldn't affect Goku. I'm not going to use that argument in this video. Kratos with Draupnir and its unlimited duplication and detonation abilities, while being capable of embedding themselves onto the opponent with multiple different runic attacks. The spear can most definitely help overwhelm True Ultra Instinct, as long as he goes about it carefully and doesn't waste his time. Unlike Heimdall, Goku's battle IQ isn't terrible and is actually capable of picking up on things mid-fight. Now sure, True Ultra Instinct and Heimdall's precognition don't work the same exact way, but the same logic does actually apply. Instead of overwhelming foresight and telepathic abilities with conscious thought, he'll just be overwhelming autonomous movement with conscious thought, to the point that he can use other weapons in hand-to-hand combat, getting the job done to beat Goku. All in all, I think it's very little win cons for Goku, using both combatants' most grounded scaling. Kratos has literal mountains of equipment that give him certain abilities he'll have access to throughout the fight, on top of his relentless aggression, raw stats, and conceptual manipulation as well, whereas main continuity Goku is kinda straightforward and doesn't really have the arsenal to withstand an opponent like Kratos. And as I said, all of these arguments are only relevant if you think Kratos doesn't have immeasurable speed. Xeno Goku would most likely annihilate Kratos if I'm being real. Do y'all think Xeno Goku and All-Stars Kratos is a good matchup? I'm actually curious to know y'all thoughts on that. But yeah, Kratos isn't getting nagged by Goku whatsoever, at least when stacking up the main continuities of these characters.
As for the Outerversal Goku anchors, as I know we will see some in the comments, the argument that I usually come across when in the comments are usually in reference to the Otherworld and Heaven. The Otherworld and Heaven are both realms within the universe of a macrocosm, with the Chosenshu and even the anime and manga saying that the world of Heaven and the Otherworld lack the concepts of time and space within them. Dragon Ball fans usually try to correlate this and associate this to Goku thus transcending both time and space. However, this isn't truly the case. Let me give you an example. If I transcend the properties or concepts of a car, do I then transcend the concept of all cars? No. So you see the error in logic when it comes to the argument and why the argument doesn't actually follow. Other arguments are with King Kai and how he didn't believe that a being such as Goku can exist in a corporeal world such as the Otherworld or Heaven. Corporeal by Oxford definitions being a person, place, or thing relating to a person's body, especially as opposed to their spirit. However, this doesn't follow, as King Kai didn't know that Goku is already dead, and if he ever did, this means that the statement is inconsistent, as the feat itself is only performed due to a spiritual or conceptual existence, and not due to some power feat, so the feat cannot be a form of measurement towards Goku's actual power. There are also things known as subspaces within the Dragon Ball cosmology and franchise that are stated to be separate from space and time, kind of like the Dangai within Bleach. However, even though the same debunk for the Otherworld or Heaven can be applied to this one, the definition of subspace doesn't even apply to things such as this, meaning the argument itself would fall, with the definition being a space that is wholly contained in another space, or whose points or elements are all in another space. However, that's only the mathematical definition, as even if you were to use the science fictional definition, which is more applicable to this as we are talking about a fictional connotation, the definition would be a hypothetical space-time continuum used for communication at a faster than light speed of travel. This would mean that either A, the subspace within Dragon Ball is either just a means of travel, which wouldn't even make the argument more convincing or logical, or B, the subspace is only fourth dimensional and Goku is only universal plus. There are also many upon many other pieces of quote-unquote evidence in support of Outerversal Goku. However, the most common one I've seen are the Koyama statements in reference to the Dragon Ball franchise cosmology, such as the 7th dimension within the Dragon Ball hierarchy, and other statements in reference to the Dragon Ball microcosms and cosmology. However, Koyama has said on multiple occasions that not only are his words only opinion and non-official, and that he is only the scriptwriter, but that viewers and fans should ask Toriyama, the actual creator and author of the Dragon Ball series and franchise, about the cosmology and other things within the series. Some debunks I've seen about these statements are that he was being harassed, but I myself as well as Rogue haven't seen or come across these said death threats or fans harassing Koyama, so we won't take them into account within the video. However, even if we were to grant Goku as Outerversal scaling, we would have to do the same thing with Kratos, with Zeus being the platonic form of fear that is entirely non-physical, non-mental, non-temporal, and non-spatial, and having conceptual existence that even surpasses that of the platonic concept of fear, as I said, of Zeus, such as the concept of hope itself, as Rogue had said prior within the video, which he still does have. Goku has not shown the ability to destroy concepts and things of that nature, meaning Goku has absolutely no win con against Kratos. Kratos has a variety of abilities, such as being immune to soul-based abilities, with Eye of Poseidon and being stated to attack the soul and body alike, and with Kratos using the Blades of Chaos to pull out Hades' soul with Godofwar 3, which also amps him, as I myself and Rogue have again said prior within the video. However, to finally answer your question and to end the debate for good, Kratos does win against Goku. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who sat here and watched this, as this did take a long time, and in actuality this video was in the works for over a month and it was actually in production for almost 3 weeks. This is by far my most worked on video, and I also want to say thanks again to Rogue, as he was a very big help in the video, and I truly appreciate what he has done to make sure this video came into fruition. Make sure to go subscribe to him, as that would mean a lot to me as well as himself. Also, do be sure to join the Discord server in the comments down below and within the description as well. However, make sure to have a nice rest of your day or night, make sure to stay safe, and till next time, bye. Bye.